Cardboard.
That's right. Today's all about cardboard. Cardboard's great for shipping, storage, and for keeping cat food away from the puppy. But all of that aside, what about making? I mean, it's what the video is about, it's why you're here, so it's not really a surprise. Cardboard is one of the greatest materials to start making with. It's easy to work with, it's fun, and it is extraordinarily flexible for any of your needs. Whether you're making something pretty, functional, or both, it's a great way to get started. Today, all we need is cardboard, a good pair of scissors, tape, and if you want to make your life easy on a few steps, a marker, or a pencil will do in a pinch. If you have more tools or if you want to get some, great. Whatever works best for you. Now that being said, before you get a new tool, make sure you read the description to make sure it's what you need. For instance, I went out to get a box cutter, but it turns out I got a box blade by accident. But you better believe I unwrapped it, set it up, and I tried to cut cardboard with it anyway. For a moment there, I thought I was fresh out of luck. Then, I had a stroke of genius. Now that is the face of a man who has made a good investment. Alright, all joking aside, let's get started. Let's start by figuring out how you can prototype something using cardboard. When you start prototyping something, you have to ask, what is it that you need? What purpose is this prototype going to fulfill? In this case, we're going to be making an enclosure that holds a 3D printer. A 3D printer needs to stay warm while it's creating a three-dimensional object out of plastic. It helps the plastic do what it's meant to do, and it means that the 3D printer's happy. So, let's make a box for it to keep it cozy. The first thing we need to do is find our material, figure out which box works best for this prototype. We could also tape together boxes if we need to, but in this case we have a good box right here. Alright, and with the box prepared, let's do a test fit. And the prototype is done. Hey, great work, fantastic job, you deserve a raise. But wait, let's take a few more points into consideration. The 3D printer needs to be worked with. You need to be able to access it without taking the enclosure off all the time. So, let's make a door. And a 3D printer needs service. So, let's make a door on top of the enclosure so that we can access some of the components if we need to work with them. And a 3D printer needs power. It needs to be able to talk to a computer or the internet. And it needs to get plastic in, since printers use plastic in the form of a string called filament. One of the great things about cardboard is we can mark it up and cut to our heart's desire. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll make some marks for the front door and the top door. And it would be great to be able to see the 3D printer in action, so let's go ahead and give it a transparent window here. We're going to make a little mark to remind ourselves that that's what we want. We're going to make a hole for the filament to get through. And we're going to eyeball a few locations that we would like to let some power and data cabling get into the enclosure. With all of our marks done, it's time to get the 3D printer out of the way, get the good scissors out, and begin cutting. Make sure you have a good pair of scissors because otherwise this is not going to be a fun time. Now since we don't have hinges to use, we're just going to fold the cardboard to make the left-hand side act like a hinge. And there we have a door. Now, something that I noticed is that this door does not like to stay closed, and once I'm done with this prototype and moving on to the next, I might want to have that door stay closed. So I made a quick note here to add a latch. Now we can move on to the top door since the front door seems to be in pretty good shape. Now most of this material is going away, so I'm not too worried about making precise cuts, and remember, this is only a prototype. Just like before, we're going to make folds to act as our hinges. Now, I did cause a little bit of damage here, but you know, it's only a cardboard prototype, no harm, add some tape and you're all set. Now that the top seems to be in pretty good shape, we're going to move on to making the holes in the back for the filament and the cabling to go through. This is the easy part. Take your scissors, make sure your hands are clear and that everything's safe, and push them through the cardboard. You like that? That's my patent pending method. And we're going to move on to the hole for the filament. And with that, we're set for testing. Now, before we begin testing, there's a few things that should be considered. First, cardboard is not always the perfect prototype material. In this case, we have one weakness: heat. Cardboard is flammable, and there are a lot of parts in the 3D printer that get extraordinarily hot. If I were to put the 3D printer in this enclosure, turn on the 3D printer and tell it to heat up, nothing should happen, but there is a chance of me causing a fire, and I'd rather not do that. So, for testing today, we are purely checking the fit and the access of the enclosure. In order to do this, we're simply going to put the 3D printer in, test out the doors, make sure that you can reach in everywhere that you need to reach in, and we're going to test putting the main power cable into the cable hole. And I'm glad that I checked this because the power cable actually doesn't fit in the hole that I made, so I'm going to have to make the cabling hole a little bit larger. After I do that, everything fits perfectly. Now, things like filament, I'm not too worried about. I gave the hole a quick eyeball to make sure that it lines up where it needs to at the back of the printer. At this point, this prototype passes all my tests. It fits the printer, and I can access it however I need to, and I can get all the cabling in and the filament in that I need. And that's prototyping with cardboard in a nutshell. This is just the basics for today, but hopefully it gave you a good insight. We're not done yet, but let's go ahead and take a quick break, have your drink of choice, walk the dog, feed the alpacas, whatever you want to do, and then come back because it's time to make a helmet. Helmets, or really props in general, are usually more fun and more interesting to make than a prototype. Main reason being is that you're not looking to make something that's necessarily functional. You're primarily trying to make something that looks pretty and fun in your mind's eye. So with that said, I've been using this helmet for quite some time, and I'd like to have an upgrade, something that's a bit bigger and a bit more extravagant. So that's the goal for today. All the while, I'm going to step through what it takes to make something that has to conform to the shape of your head, which is just about the only thing that this helmet has to conform to. Otherwise, it's all about imagination and creativity. Now, a quick note before we get started. Props do take damage. Something that I've found that helps a great deal is any exposed edges showing the corrugated lines of the cardboard can be taped over to massively increase the lifespan of the prop. Now then, step 1, pick your cardboard. In this case, we have another good box right here, and we're going to use that. For this next step, we need string or something similar to string. In my case, I'm going to be using a piece of electrical wire. We're going to use this to get a rough idea of the circumference of my head. We're going to wrap it around once and then make a cut. After that, we're going to tape it together to make it into a complete circle. We're going to use this as a template to figure out the size and shape that the helmet needs to have. With our marks complete, it's time to start cutting. As long as I keep in mind that I need to fit my head in this helmet, I can be as creative as I like. Before we dive deep into the creative side, we're going to start by making cuts where we just put marks. These cuts are going to help me fold this box so that I can make it a little bit more conforming for my head. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side of the box. With those cuts complete, we're going to make folds on both sides to make this box into the correct shape. Now we're getting more into creative territory. It's time to start taping up this box, but first we want to see how these extra flaps are going to fold down. If we like, we can get fancy here, but in this case I'm just going to keep it plain and simple and make the top flat. Little bit of tidying up here, making a few cuts just to make these flaps fit on the top of the helmet. I intentionally made this helmet so it would go below my shoulders, so I need to make a couple of holes on the sides to make room. After finishing one side, I was able to complete the other side using the magic of video editing. And with that out of the way, let's begin taping up the rest of the helmet. Hey, that's looking pretty good. Simple, but I like it, and we can work with this. As you can probably tell, I'm still missing a couple of features, but this helmet does fit great. Next, we're going to work on the face. To do this, I have a little bit of a strange method. We're going to take our marker and we're going to tap it around where my face is. Tapping the marker around is helping me figure out where my facial features are in comparison to the cardboard on the front. Once I find roughly where it sounds like something should be, I make a mark. Now, truth be told, as happy as I was with how close I got my marks, I just wasn't happy with the face that I came up with afterwards. So I decided to make a bit more of an open helmet design. Same helmet as before, but I made some more cuts up front to show my entire face instead of just pieces. Now, earlier I said something about making something bigger and more extravagant, and this helmet is definitely bigger, but extravagant not so much. Let's work on that. After a lot of thought, I decided that something that would be really interesting would be a tail, or a cape, or whatever I want it to be. Something that's hanging off the back. The cool thing is that after I make this piece on the back, I can do whatever I want with it. I could add wings, I could spray paint it, I could add more pieces of cardboard to make it bigger, I could put a solar panel on it if I really wanted to, I could add bits and pieces of electronics to make it look nerdy. I have a lot of options to go with here, but you know, for now, I'm going to just leave it as is. I'm really happy with the look, and I think this is a great helmet. So to wrap up this rather long video, let's talk about what we did today. We talked about what we need in order to start making with cardboard. We talked about prototyping with cardboard. And we talked about making something that's just fun, or pretty, or strange, that is entirely a creation out of your mind's eye, with very little to conform to. Remember, at the end of the day, the best tool is your own creativity. I hope that you enjoyed what we talked about today, and I hope that I get to talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.